you're just here for the sound samples, I will put the timestamp in the description below, so thank you for watching, see you later. But for those of you sticking around, today we're talking about two very popular Shure microphones, the SM7B and the SM57. Now, everyone knows about the SM57, how legendary it is on all sorts of instruments, snare, guitar cab. And then the SM7B is kind of in an interesting spot where it's not quite as well known, but most people know it now as the podcasting microphone, because it seems like that's what everyone's using to podcast with. But it's just a legendary mic in its own right, and it's been used on instruments for ages. And my understanding is that it was originally developed basically to be almost like an SM57 on steroids. It was sort of like Shure went to their team and said, okay, the SM57 is, our best-selling microphone. If you had limitless resources, how could you make a better SM57? And again, as far as I know, this is what they came back with, the SM7B. So there's some obvious differences. I'm not going to really go over specs here, but what I'm interested in is how they differ on the drum set. So I'm going to compare these two on snare, kick, and then on toms. I've used these interchangeably on all of those sources for a while now, but I've never really pitted them directly against each other to see what I like the sound of better. I just sort of go back and forth based on my whim. So now is the time to settle which one is actually the better mic for all of those different spots. Now, I will tell you that I'm not using the cloud lifter on the SM7B. I actually don't have a cloud lifter because I usually record drums, and my assumption is just that the source signal is so loud that you don't really need that extra boost. But let me know if I'm missing something there and if I really should have the cloud lifter even though I'm recording drums. So just know that for this experiment, I am not using the cloud lifter. And then what I think I'm going to do, the other thing, just bear in mind that you're going to see it doesn't look like the capsules line up. But if you've looked inside an SM7B, you'll see that the capsule is actually pretty far in this little like metal grate here. So it's gonna look like the SM57 is a lot farther back, but I'm actually lining the capsules up. And then I think what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna gaff tape these two guys together. I don't really have a great way to get them right next to each other, but yeah, it's kind of difficult to perfectly line up the capsules, but I'm gonna do my best to try and get a similar angle on the source. But it's not gonna be perfect, but that's what we got. So anyways, without further ado, let's pit these back to back. I will listen back and then we'll talk about the results. Okay, so I just got done listening to the tracks, and the results were both surprising and kind of what I expected. Surprising because there was actually more of a difference than I had anticipated. I tend to find that microphones sound a little more similar than dissimilar, but there was definitely a discernible difference between these two, but that difference was basically what I expected, that the SM57 had a little more top end, especially in the mid-range and sort of upper mids, and the SM7 was a little darker sounding overall, and I don't know, maybe a little like fuller if you want to say that, maybe slightly warmer, dare I say. As far as what I would actually use, what I would use preferentially, one over the other, I think it's kind of a toss-up, and maybe depending on the source or my mood at the time. I was flipping back and forth, and when it was on the snare, I was thinking, oh, it's kind of nice to hear the snare with that snappy top range, and then I'd flip to the SM7, like, oh, but this sounds chunkier and fuller. So I don't know, I think in general, I would probably err towards using the SM7 on naturally darker sources like the toms and the kick, and then I might go more for the 57 on the snare. But you see people using SM7s on hi-hats all the time, and I assume that the idea behind that is to sort of naturally roll off some of the harsh upper mid-range. So you can justify using either mic for any source however you want, but hopefully now you are at least a little better informed, and I'm a little better informed having heard them both back to back, and I think that either mic is a fine decision on basically any source you want to throw it on. So I'm pretty much ambivalent on the two, but let me know what you think, or if you had a strong preference towards one or the other. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one.